r/AskReddit. Guys, what's a good sign that a woman is just using you? Pretty much the same as when any person is just using you. The relationship feels unbalanced and unequal, with you giving more than you are receiving. In a good relationship, friendship, whatever, both people are giving what they want to give without coercion, and both feel adequately rewarded for it. Sometimes one person needs more, sometimes the other, but it evens out over time. When you feel like you're being coerced into giving more than you really want, whether that's with force or emotional manipulation or whatever, you're being used and you'll eventually resent it. This kinda reminds me of a quote I read somewhere: a good relationship is 60-40, with each person trying to be the one giving 60%. Learned this with my best friend, who also was my roommate. Would share my stuff with him, rarely asked him to help pay for it. Would cover his rent while he went through a hard time. Worked a bunch of overtime to make sure bills weren't an issue, but when I needed a ride to and from work due to COVID and not wanting to use public transport during the peak of the pandemic, it was suddenly too much. He didn't like giving me rides everywhere, and it was suddenly really hard living with his best friend. Started hiding stuff in his room stuff without me, stopped giving me rides to and from work when I couldn't use the bus because it was early late shift. That stuff really hurt, cause he is like a younger brother to me, and it sucked realizing how one-sided things had become. Does she ever ask you how you are doing, more than superficially, or seem interested in what's going on with your life? More like, when she asks how you are doing, does she respond to, or even remember, any specific things you tell her about? Definitely. When a woman doesn't seem interested in anything more than superficial conversation, I get turned off pretty quick. Edit. Who can get stuffed? Anytime you try opening up, you're acting off character, selfish, and stuff, etc. It's usually the typical pathetic manipulation people pull to make you feel bad for either standing up for yourself or just trying to be you. I guess this behavior depends on how far into the relationship you are with those types of people. For instance, in several of my own interactions with people that eventually ended up using me, they were very keen on making me feel comfortable opening up and being vulnerable to establish that kind of connection and desire for more of it. Then, much later on, when I was sufficiently hooked, did they start with the negative reactions and manipulation. She doesn't act that interested when you are interested, flirting, contacting her, but when you stop, suddenly she is very interested and contacts you, a lot until you act interested again. The cycle then repeats. Just. WHY. Edit. Oh, asking why does wonders. This is exactly what happened in my younger years. I was super into a girl that I worked with, and we would hang out all the time after work. However, I was never getting anywhere with her. I know I had made my intentions clear, and she never told me it would never happen, but just kept the possibility of it happening open. I eventually saw the writing on the wall and moved on and met my wife. I tell you, the second I stopped pursuing her and started acting like just a friend, she flipped on a dime and started laying it on strong. I would like to think that I was smart enough to not fall for her stuff. The reality is I was so smitten with my wife that I don't think anything could have made me notice another girl. If I had moved on to anybody else besides my wife, I probably would have fallen for it all over again. Your issues aren't worth talking about, but she will unload all of hers on you. Amen. Got out of a long relationship that turned into this just 6 months ago. Would sit and moan when Jen kick off about the most infinitesimal things for hours, but when even serious issues came up in my life, like my brother attempting stuff, her response was, well, he's on stuff anyway. One-sidedness. When she expects you to do things that she wouldn't do herself. Have had people tell me I can't be there for you in any way, shape, or form, but I don't want you to leave. And, for the double whammy, I can't handle you leaving right now. You're making me angry that you brought up your issues. You can't come to me for things like that. You knew I was upset. All while crying, sobbing to make you feel bad. Edit. I forgot an important sentence. You're being so selfish. If that's not being used, I don't know what is. I understand that people go through difficult times, and that sometimes it is difficult to help other people through issues when you have your own, but if you truly care about that person, you make time. That's what a friendship or relationship is. A friendship relationship is a give and take. If all you're doing is giving and all they're doing is taking, you're being used, regardless of the excuse. Reminds me of a saying I heard a few months ago on the internet. Givers, be mindful of your limits because the takers don't have any. Edit. And for those of you who will argue, oh, you just don't understand. Yes. I do. I have been at the bottom of the deepest well, on half a dozen different meds to keep me sane, when a friend of mine came to me needing help, and you know what? My issues didn't even come into play. They were there for me when I needed it, so I'm there for them when they need it. That's how it works. We're both doing better now thanks to each other. If you can't heal with your friend, then they are not your friend. I had a girl tell me she only talks to a guy because he buys her food when she asks. This guy was my friend, and was very interested in her. I hope you told your friend, or at least convinced her to say something. I used to be friends with a girl who would just get guys to buy her stuff. She would put on a baby voice whenever she would ask. She even gets her male friends to buy her stuff when she knows they really value the friendship and don't want her to leave if they say no. She purposely befriends lonely guys and manipulates them. Her boyfriends are also guys who typically have trouble with women. I think she was all of theirs first girlfriend. She tried with her female friends too, but we just say no cause we can do without her. She never calls you by your name and you find out you're labeled free food in her phone. Stuff that would have hurt real bad. I was dating a girl who said she was too busy to go on a date on Saturday, and that she was only free on Tuesdays. She also said that she wanted to date other guys while dating me. She later admitted that she was cycling boyfriends through the week for free food. I dropped her like a bag of moldy tangerines. Infinite food glitch. Huh? How do these people sleep at night? She's in desperate need of a lung transplant and is always complimenting you about what nice lungs you have and making offhanded comments about how you don't use your lungs much and could probably do okay without them. Sounds like you're wasting your breath with her. We've all been there, man. Hang tough. A girl once called me her happy pill, a nickname her therapist created cause I genuinely made her life so much better, but she cheated on me anyway. My friend told me that you only take a pill when you need it, and I've lived by that and used that as a filter for all my relationships. Dated two women whose therapists said I was a good person to have in their lives and that I was a positive stabilizing presence. One cheated on me, other one ditched me. Good times, good times. Oh, I can answer this one. When asking you for something, time, money, physical effort, if you say yes, she will almost always and immediately look for something else to ask you for that is related. For example, can you stop and pick up those hair things for me? Okay, can you also stop by the shop next door and get me that thing I like? This kind of things isn't a big deal on occasion, but when it's a repeating pattern, it's a red flag. She will point out how much she stuffs you and how it's for you. Will treat most of your interests with disdain or indifference. Doesn't ever really care what you have to say. When you attempt to point out any inequality in the relationship, she will get extremely defensive and attack you for being selfish, and tell you you need to be more supportive, giving a real man. The last one I think is a red flag that is extremely obvious, yet many people don't realize it. The moment anyone says anything along the lines of a real man would, or be a man, or anything similar, you can be stuff sure this person is emasculating you in order to manipulate you, period. As soon as you hear anything like that, run. If you feel like you're being used, and you can't have the conversation about it with her. Wow. I just realized that an emotionally mature and non-using person would want to have that conversation because they don't want you to feel that way anymore. This comment is genius. Very succinct, and true. Well put. I'm not a man, but I've known too many not-so-great women and have had guy friends used by women, so I think I can chime in here a little. She never wants to listen to your complaints, but that's all she does herself. She asks about your bank account and your job often and says she's just wondering. She gets unreasonably mad when you forget a holiday. She makes deals with you using her body. If you buy me this, I'll suck your stuff in the car. She lies constantly about her own financial situation or personal relationships. She always wants to hang out with a specific friend of yours. She doesn't thank you for things, but rather expects them. She manipulates you by threatening to withhold stuff until she gets her way. She only says I love you when you give her something or do something for her. She never pays for anything herself. She guilt trips the life out of you. She is unreasonably, explosively defensive when you voice your concerns regarding the relationship. Up. If your girls is doing any of these, find a new girl. If you and your partner do this for mutual, well-intended fun, then there's of course no problem. It's when one person uses it specifically to get what they want, as a manipulation tool, that I find it to be a serious issue. You should never have to earn stuff, unless that's a DS thing that you've both discussed and consented to beforehand. Girl is using my body and he doesn't see it. She only reaches out to him when she's single. Nothing ever comes of it, as she will find excuse after excuse to not actually meet up. Then when she gets a new boyfriend, she ghosts him unless something goes wrong and she needs a shoulder to cry on. Guys, if she only reaches out to you when she's hurt or vulnerable, she doesn't want you, she wants sympathy and knows you'll give it to her. Edit. And to be clear, this isn't an exclusively girl thing to do. Guys can be guilty of this too. Edit 2, and if you were in this situation and hung on only because you thought you'd get stuff relationship out of it, that's Nissy guy incel behavior. If you hang around for a reason that isn't I genuinely care about this person in a non-romantic context, and would keep doing this if there was no stuff romantic desire, then that isn't you being the good guy. You don't want them, you want the idea of them that you've built in your head. It's possible you're both wrong.